Throughout this video, we're going to work under the assumption that to improve your stick protection, shooting, and dodging, you're going to have to already have at least fair stick skills. More than likely, the better your stick skills are at this time, the easier it's going to be to master the skills in this tape. It is my belief that the game of lacrosse revolves around good stick skills. If you have good stick skills at any level, it'll make you a more dangerous player. And we're going to illustrate that, especially when we talk about shooting and dodging. The way I define good stick skills is that you have the ability to pass, catch, and shoot both right-handed and left-handed on the run, full speed. There's plenty of younger players that can stand stationary up against a wall and do all these things left-handed and do everything right-handed, and then they go run and they have a lot of problems with it. So good stick skills is the ability, again, to be able to play righty and lefty, pass, catch, and shoot full speed on the run. It doesn't mean you have the best tricks or you can do more tricks than the next guy. It just means go through the basics and be able to do it all on the run. Good stick skills are going to start with the grip on the stick. We got to make sure that the stick is gripped comfortably at the end of our fingers and not in the palm of our hand. We also want to have a nice soft grip on the stick. This will allow us to cradle the right way, and when we're catching and throwing, it'll allow us to catch and throw the right way. But we have to have a nice soft grip, and the bottom hand is also doing the same thing, opposite of the top hand. It's in our fingers, nice soft grip. The next thing we need to do is have a good cradle, and there's two types of cradles that we're going to use in a game. The first cradle we're going to use in a game is a horizontal cradle. The next one is a vertical cradle. To get a good horizontal cradle, again, we just have to make sure that the stick is in our fingers and not in the palm of our hand. If it's in the palm of our hand, we're never going to get a good cradle. But if it rests down there at the end of our fingers, we'll be all set. We need to make sure that when we cradle, we just turn the stick over towards our body. The bottom hand is basically just acting as a guide, and we're just going to make the OK sign with the bottom hand. So we're just turning the stick over, bringing it towards us, kind of like we're just doing a wrist curl, just turning it towards us. The horizontal cradle is going to be used most of the time in the open field when we're unplayed by a defenseman. And as a defenseman comes and picks us up, we want to get into a vertical cradle. At the younger level, we want to cradle mostly with two hands. And as we start to get a little bit more advanced, we're going to go with a one-handed vertical cradle. And basically, again, we're just taking this cradle from here and we're moving it up to this area up in here, and we're just turning our wrist over. The cradle is going to be really important, not only when defensive players check our sticks. The centrifugal force is going to help keep the ball in our stick, but we're going to learn later on that this cradle here is going to move into a vertical cradle, but it's also going to help in our shooting. The next part of stick skills we're going to talk about is throwing or passing to a teammate. First thing I like to do is make sure my hands are in a good position on the stick. I like to have my hands about 13 inches apart. Most of the time, if you watch me in a game, I'll have my hands choked up a little bit, unless I'm making a real long pass. Otherwise, I like to have my hands choked up a little bit for control. You'll also notice that when I go throw the ball, I have my hands and elbows high and away from my body. The next thing I need to do when I throw the ball is I want to pick a target. My teammate will hopefully give me a target with his stick, and I want to make sure the head of my stick goes directly at his target.
And Mark Millen. Great pass and a great shot and a goal.
If the head of my stick goes in an area away from his stick, I'm going to miss the target. So when I throw, I need to have my hands and elbows high and away, about 13 inches apart. Head of my stick goes right at the target. Also, I want to step towards my target, not away from it. I want to step towards my target when I'm throwing to it. You'll notice when I'm throwing that my top hand is doing most of the work, similar to throwing a baseball or throwing anything, but my top hand is doing most of the work and my bottom hand is pretty much a guide. When receiving a pass, there's also a bunch of things I need to keep in mind. The first thing I need to do is make sure I'm always moving in the direction of my teammate. If I feel I'm open, I don't want to stand stationary, I just want to move towards my teammate and look to give him a target. The next thing I need to do is, again, choke up on my stick a little bit. There's really no need to catch the ball with your hands down here, especially when you're talking about receiving a pass with your offhand. Make it a little bit more comfortable by choking up. You still have plenty of time to catch the ball and slide your hands down. The next thing I need to do is make sure that I catch the ball on the side of my body and I don't go out and lunge for the ball. I want to make sure I wait for the ball to come to me and not reach out for it. When catching it, I also want to think in terms almost of catching an egg, and that'll allow me to have real soft hands. So as the ball comes in, catch it, move it. Real soft. You should almost not even hear the ball land in your stick. Having the proper grip is going to allow you to have those soft hands. Being able to play both left-handed and right-handed is, again, a key ingredient to getting your game to the next level, and it's something that's really helped me over the years to be a more dangerous player. Unfortunately, it's not a real easy skill to learn. One of the things you probably notice with your offhand is that when you're working on your strong hand, all your technique is good. Your hands and elbows are up. You do everything the same way. You're really comfortable. And then once you go to your offhand, everything becomes really awkward. You're throwing a different way. A drill I used to do when I was growing up is, I just call it the mirror drill. And what I did was I stopped and I really broke down exactly what I was doing with my strong hand. So I would look and I would see my hands were in a certain position. They were high and away from my body. I was stepping to my target. Everything was really good, really fluid, and really comfortable. Again, when I was working on my offhand, everything was very awkward. So I stopped and said, okay, I'm working on doing certain things with my right hand. Why can't I do them with my offhand? I looked and I broke it down and said, here's what I need to do. I tried to do all the same things with my offhand as I did with my strong hand, and just without even a ball, just worked on the technique over and over. And after a while, I would start picking up a ball, throwing off a wall, and my left hand technique got exactly like my right hand. Once you get comfortable with all the skills you need in order to have good stick skills, you got to spend a lot of time practicing, and I mean a lot of time. If you really want to have the stick skills to be a really good player, go out and spend a great deal of time. The first thing you should do is just play off a wall. You've probably heard it hundreds of times from your coach. You just need to play left-handed, right-handed. I'd say 50 to 100 reps a day, both left-handed and right-handed. Just keep throwing off the wall. Make sure your technique is good. You're stepping towards your target. After you've got done working on the fundamentals, you may want to have some fun. Just finish up your practice session that way. Try throwing some between the legs. Believe it or not, this will help your stick skills. The other thing you want to maybe work on is just some reverse behind the backs, just some different things in order to make your sessions a little bit more interesting. You can then maybe just work on some regular behind the back passes, and that'll be a good way to finish up. Also, work on some stick tricks. Anytime you can have your stick in your hands, working on different things, working on your eye-hand coordination, it'll really help your game. Work on just trying to throw the ball off the stick. Maybe try different tricks like this. Try to get around it twice. Another trick you can try is just throw the ball up, catch it on the sidewall. Final trick, just to have some fun, is a stick twirl. If you can master these skills and be able to play both left-handed and right-handed comfortably, you're going to be a much more dangerous player. Stick protection is going to be important as an offensive player when you're carrying the ball looking to feed, transitioning the ball to another teammate, and getting ready to set up a dodge. The basic idea of having good stick protection is to always keep your body in between the stick and the defensive player. Good technique is going to start with the cradle, and technique is going to be very important. We're also going to illustrate a couple ways to protect your stick just by the way you move on the field. During this segment, we're going to talk about a couple of different ways to protect your stick, and we'll just start by talking a little bit about a two-handed cradle. Most younger players at the youth level are going to be taught that they need to cradle the stick with two hands. The key in protecting your stick in this situation is to make sure that you take your cradle from horizontal into a little bit vertical, and as a defenseman comes and picks you up, you're just going to need to continue cradling and try to protect your stick with your body. You'll also see some high-level players who attackmen come around the goal with a really strong power cradle. The key again here is to just make sure that you're cradling with your top hand. As a defensive player comes and picks you up, you're going to turn into him to absorb the check. We're cradling pretty hard in this situation, and we're hoping that if a defensive player checks our stick, the ball is going to stay in there because of the cradle. We talked briefly before about the vertical cradle, and the thing we have to understand is that this is the most important part of having good stick protection. Just to review, we want to make sure the stick is in our fingers as opposed to in the palm of our hand, and we want to make sure we cradle with our wrist. We also want to keep our elbow locked, keep very tightly to our ribs, okay? And you'll see the stick is kind of cradled somewhere near my ear, or what's referred to in lacrosse as the box area. The next thing we need to do to have good stick protection is get our offhand up high and away from our body, and this will act kind of naturally as a shield between the defender and my stick. We've got to make sure, though, that I don't push off the defender with this free hand, or I'll be called for a warding off. But if it just sits up there and acts as a shield, no problem. Also, I got to make sure that I turn my upper body, turn my shoulders into the defenseman, and again, my body will be between my stick and the defenseman, which is our goal to have good stick protection. The last thing we need to do to have good stick protection is just to make sure our head is always up, looking towards the middle of the field. A lot of young players will focus so much on having good stick protection, everything will be great, and then they'll forget about keeping their head up, their head will go down, and they won't see their teammates. So quick review, make sure our elbow's locked. Want to make sure we cradle with our wrist and not with our arm. Next thing we have to do is have our hand up high and away, keep our head up, turn our upper body, and the defenseman will never get it away from you. Once I establish good stick protection running in one direction, I need to learn to maintain it through a dodge. In a change of direction dodge, I need to make sure my stick is tucked. As I get into the dodge and I change direction, I want to make sure my stick stays in towards my body, in between my legs. As I go to switch hands, again, I want to make sure my stick stays close to my body. I don't want to pin it against my chest, that's illegal. And then as I roll out of the dodge, I again keep it near my chest, and then I protect my stick outside the dodge. If I was to do it the incorrect way, I would keep my stick nice and tucked into the dodge, then I would keep it outside my legs and hang it behind me, and I'm going to lose the ball pretty easily. Probably the best way to work on your stick protection is just have another defenseman go out there with you, shadow you, run back and forth, and have him throw checks when you leave your stick unprotected. If you are in a situation where you don't have another defenseman, a drill I use and a drill you can use to work in your stick protection is just get 2 cones and try to run back and forth, making sure that you're working on all the elements and everything's in place. Your stick is really tucked, you go into your change of direction, you keep your stick between your legs. It should look something like this. Just a small variation to this drill, just to make sure that your head is continuously up, is to grab a friend or teammate or coach and have him stand in the front of the crease area and just hold up numbers with his hand. As I run back and forth to make sure my head is up, I need to read off the numbers my coach is holding up. So that's what this will look like. 2, 5, 4, 2, There are 2 other valuable tools you can use to protect your stick and alleviate a really aggressive checking defenseman from taking the ball away from you. The first one is to make sure you change planes. Right now I'm running on the same line or the same plane, and it makes it very easy for my defenseman to time up his checks. If I change planes or zigzag and run in and out on my defenseman, again, keeping my stick protected fundamentally, but running on a different plane will make it very hard for him to time up his checks. The other thing you can do, and probably works more than anything, and the mistake more younger players make than anything else, is just running full speed. If you run 100% full speed when that ball is in your stick, the defenseman's got to run full speed. He won't be able to throw as many checks, you won't get the ball turned over quite as much, and you'll have better stick protection. To practice running on a different plane or running in a zigzag pattern, the best way to do it is to get a defenseman out there with you, have him throw a lot of checks, and continuously run in about 10 or 12 yards at a time on a zigzag. If you don't have that option open to you, get 2 cones, put them about 12 yards apart, run in between them again on a zigzag pattern, keep your head up and keep your stick protected the whole time. Regardless of what level you're currently playing at, having good stick protection will make you a better offensive player. One thing I used to do when I was growing up, when I would go out and run long distances, I would continuously run with my stick protected, cradling with my wrist, with my arm up, and I think that helped me become a better player. As you'll see later on in the video, having good stick protection will make you a better dodger as well as a better shooter. While stick protection is not necessarily the easiest skill to master, it is easy to practice. Make sure you spend a fair amount of time working on it.